Welcome to Lip Service for Contractors. Here you'll learn what moves the needle in your business. With your hosts, Brigham, the deep thinker, Josh, the $100 million contractor, Zach, the confused millennial, Laura, the foreigner. Lip Service. It's not about dictatorship. It's about leadership. It's not about duplication. It's about innovation. It's not about stuff. It's about your people. Strap in and get ready for some lip service.
And we are back with another episode of Lip Service for Contractors. Because this is a new podcast, I want to review very quickly what Lip Service is all about. We focus in on leadership, as well as innovation and your people. And today we have a fantastic show. Why? Because we're going to focus in on what affects your people the most. And that is your culture, your company culture, and the brand that goes out to the consumer. Both groups are groups of people. And today we're going to focus in on that importance. So we'll do that and much, much more in 60 seconds.
Power Selling Pros is the customer service coaching company for contractors. Their one-on-one coaching for CSRs helps contractors book at least 85% of their calls and wow more customers. And their group training for technicians helps you create a better buying experience in the home and close more sales. Visit powersellingpros.com to learn more about how you can make more money with their coaching programs.
Chances are you love what you're hearing on Lip Service for Contractors. And if you want to go deeper, have an actionable playbook, or just want to learn from some of the most successful and profitable contractors in the industry, check out Clover Marketing from Josh and Laura. They give away free, amazing information, tools, SOPs, scripts, and processes that help their family business grow to over 140 million. And those same tools have helped other contractors in the industry blow up their business and grow an average of 20% every single year. Check out growwithclover.com/free gifts. They update the free gifts section all the time, so make sure you keep coming back.
And we are back with Lip Service for Contractors. We're going to jump in with Josh talking about company culture as well as company brand. Go ahead, Josh.
So we kind of been talking about really, like, I don't know if we've made this clear through the process, but I have a really clear step-by-step system of analyzing how set for success of businesses in our industry. And we've gone through, different steps, like thinking of their business like a funnel. A lot of this is really, if you're set up for these things, you could make up for a lot of other things. It makes up for sales. It makes up for, and sales covers everything. But the one we're talking about today is, I think, the most important. It's the most difficult and is the most forgotten about or not paid attention to, at very least, which is your company culture internally and then your brand. And to be clear, these aren't necessarily the same things. So I want to make that really clear. And I don't think we need to. Do you guys think we need to explain culture and brand?
Yeah, I think it's intuitive to a point, but there's two different ways you can think of a brand, from a company level and from a personal level. So I think you should kind of dissect it just a little bit, synopsize it just real quick.
Yeah, brand is really what I would consider a marketing term. And there's lots of ways of driving out, but at a very basic level, brand is, if I had to make your company a person, which people do whether you realize it or not, who is that person? Who exactly are they? What do they do? What do they represent? What do I feel when I talk about this person? There's people in your life that you have a internal feeling for. In fact, most people, if you really deep dive into it, right? Your brand is making your company imitate that feeling, right? That person. Are you the warm and fuzzy company? Are you the family company? Are you the speed of service company? And it's not just speed of service. You have to go much deeper than that to be effective. If you're like, hey, we're the guy that gets out there fast, a lot of times you need to dive deeper into why and how you're going to make people feel like that and why that's important. So that's kind of the brand. The other side is culture, which is the exact same thing. except it's not to potential customers. It's to your team members. What do they feel about your business? When they picture your business as a person, what do they think about? What do they see? And they see you as the business owner, but they see more than you if you're doing it right. Because the culture is inclusive and beyond you. If your culture is you, you are destined to hit a roadblock. It's just a matter of time because you aren't scalable. You have to create something beyond yourself. And culture is the way of doing that. And that could be, being an amazing place to work, being the caring company, the guys that always look at each other first. There's a million ways to build a culture. I'm sure Brigham has a very deep dive on this. For me, like you'll find almost everything I do, not just with Grow with Clover, but on this podcast and the clients we work with, I am very much a sales-driven culture. I'm very much a numbers-driven culture, and I hold the people accountable. So that's the general culture I have within the business. That's certainly not the brand I have, though.
So as you're speaking about culture, you clearly have, with that comes like your mission. So for ours, it's increase profitability, teach people to kind of increase profitability, have more fun and accelerate growth. How that clearly influences your culture. So number one, how do you choose like your mission statements that align with the culture you want to create? Does that make sense?
Yeah, mission statements are often overlooked, and I don't think they have an incredible amount of importance, but I think you have to identify who you want to be. Once again, if I said, hey, I just want to be like me, to a point, that's exactly who I am, right? I am all about having fun and excitement and enjoying myself. I'm certainly all about growth. Anybody who knows me personally, especially, growth is one of my biggest drivers, one of the things I care about the most. And profitability really means lots of things. It doesn't just mean money necessarily, but helping people achieve things is a profitability, right? That's what I think of it as. So we build a business around that, meaning everything we do, we put through that lens of does this make it more fun? Which could also mean make it easier, right? Because that could be relative to it, right? Does this increase profitability? Does this accelerate their growth? Not just as a revenue side, a lot of time it is revenue, but it could also be on their systems and how much freedom they have and how exciting it is and how fun the business. This is all forms of different growth. So yeah, that's who we are internally as a culture. We're all about profit, growth, and fun. That's also our brand, but it's unusual to have the same thing. But we're in marketing and consulting. It's a little different than an HVC business. For Parker and Sons, or for other companies I work with, the culture is entirely different. They're related, but they're not the same thing, the culture and the brand. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. And I think that the closer you can make your company culture and your company brand be more clear and concise and even aligned, the better. Why? Because if it's not clear and it's not understood, it's not going to stick and it's not going to help your company. So, and I totally agree with Josh. What's an example of a company brand? Would Dave Lennox be an example of a company brand where you've got the guy with what he used to wear in some sort of
overalls? He wore overall and like a newsy cap. Yeah.
He's got the cap and he's this nice, friendly guy, the kind of guy that you would, trust. And that was the whole point of Dave Lennox, is that was their brand. Now, even Parker and Sons has a brand. It's the, it has to do with the family. Finish the
So we had Vince, who was Mr. Parker, who ran the plumbing department. He's kind of an older kind of grandpa looking gentleman. He may not like me saying that. But he was the Mr. Parker. And then we have, Beano Melvins, which is a, kind of an anti-brand, which is still a brand. And then Paul, my father, runs the brand now, right? But to take that a step back, right? Dave Lennox is a perfect example of a brand. Dave Lennox is a person, but it's what you feel from that person that's the brand. It's not just the image of it. So when you see that guy in overalls, there are some natural thoughts, and the advertising they do a pretty good job of staying on brand. So the way they talk to you, the way they communicate, the advertising they put together, how they work with dealers, they all kind of relate the same way. And for Lennox, that's doing business the way it used to be done, right? With a handshake, following through, being, calmer, which, that you take it back to that kind of old school type of business, right? They're not fast digital, super go get it guys. They are, but that's not their brand, right? So that's a perfect example that a lot of people will know, right? When you think of Dave Lennox, you may see an image of your head, but it also evokes emotions, whether you realize it or not. Now, the key to that is how well do you evoke the emotions that you want? If Lennox, really wants to be a digital, high speed, we get everything done, we are the most innovative company in the world, then Dave Lennox, to me, doesn't come across that way. So you have to be real careful about making sure just because you think of something that the customer is on the same page as you, because brand confusion is incredibly common and incredibly difficult to overcome unless you really plan ahead.
Yeah.
So in terms of avoiding brand confusion, it's all about having brand alignment. And you can take that to the extremes of like one of our companies is AC Doctors, not one of our companies, one of our clients, AC Doctors. And they're an incredible company. And they're speaking about taking their brand to the point of sending their texts out and like doctor
Lab coat. Yeah.
Like a lab coat. So you can take your brand that far that you have such alignment. And then it's all of those little moves that reduce brand confusion. So that's what I've recognized in the industry, but I'd like to put the question out to you guys. What are the best ways to achieve brand alignment?
Do you want me to Brigham? Go for it.
Well, for me, you got to go back to the principles behind the way that you want to run your company. And to a certain extent, I think that runs into culture as much as it does brand, and maybe even more so with company culture. It all depends on how you want to run your organization. Josh was mentioning how he likes to run his organization, that it's very numbers driven. And what was the other one?
It's about accountability and fun too. It has to be fun, but
but also about numbers and about accountability and so on and so forth. And I totally agree with that. However, with my organization, we have a very, very heavy focus on people. And it's funny, the more we do these podcasts together, the more I realize, gosh, if we can just take the best things that Laura and Josh have and the best things that we have going on at Power Selling Pros and kind of find a way to create something even better than what we individually both have, who knows, what we could create. It's a very interesting thing to think about. But on my end, we're very, very focused on true principles that help people become very, very valuable to the organization. I believe that if I can create an environment for my team where they are completely 100% emotionally engaged in their work, that they can do amazing things for the organization. And it's not just a belief for me. It's in my mind, factually true, because it happens over and over and over again, that if I can get each member of my team emotionally 100% engaged in what they're doing and believing in the cause behind the thing that they're doing, that's how I've become or the organization itself has become as successful as it is and continues to grow and go beyond customer satisfaction. So focus on people is how we've developed our customer brand, and it's consistent. The brand and the culture are consistent. Why? Because they're both focused on people. It is for the people.
So that brings it right back to the why. Like that's very much interconnected with having a solid why. And I think having a solid why it totally influences the culture. Someone's very popular and are getting called.
I know the governor's calling. He always does.
Oh yeah, you're best friends, I heard.
But Josh, let me give you another example of that. If you look at United States of America, for example, mm-hmm. Constitution, Declaration of Independence, and how it was set up with the checks and the balances and so on and so forth. It was basically created for the people. The nation or the country or the government was meant to serve the people and not vice versa. Mm-hmm. And of course, it's an ongoing argument that goes on even today. But the nation's only as good as its people. And the same holds true with a company. The company is only as good as its people. And a family is only as good as the members of that family. That's the strength of it. And so with that focus and with that mindset, you can create a pretty powerful culture, especially when somebody feels that important inside of an organization, inside of a family, inside of a nation.
Yeah. And I agree with that 100%. The only caveat I do that, like, you don't have to recruit the best people. Most of the people that you make that are going to be the high quality, you're going to have to make them the best people. It's hard to win a long-term battle and really scale and really have success by, I only hire the best people. Like, that's impressive. No one does that. Like, everybody, you have to create great people too. Right. So I think a big piece of this too, though, so for both brand and culture, right? I keep harping on this, but it's important that you make it into a person. So an example I do of this, like Laura, this was a big turning point for her, and she was writing our copy and email and text and doing our ads, is creating a customer persona, right? So like, hey, so many companies like, oh, my average person is, women 35 to 54. That's our average client. Secondary demo is adults 35, 54. Meaning, hey, they have enough money and they probably have a house. Like, that's a good starting point. I would make the argument, like, that doesn't tell you hardly anything. And if I'm running ads and all I got to do is target people 35, 54, man, that's pretty broad. Like, I don't know exactly where I should be doing, right? It's important you make an actual customer persona because it helps you realize and focus in more. So like for us, we pick certain clients of ours that, like, these are our ideal clients, and we have their picture, we have their age, we have what they like to do as a hobby, what do they watch on television, what do they listen to on the radio, what publications do they read, are they married, are they not, what's their religion, right? And you really hone in on, like, holy crap, like, this is the guy I want.
My comment on that is I'm all about that. However, I think it's even more powerful to actually just think about somebody that is your perfect client. Because if you're writing copy or you're making a decision that's going to affect the customer, you know exactly who you're speaking to. You know the language that they'll resonate with. And for me, if I map out various things they like, I still can't put a person to that quite as clear as if it's an actual person I know. If that's a customer I know, or if that's one of our clients that I know. If it's a physical person, in my opinion, that's so much easier. So what I would say to that is, if you're a company out there and you don't even know, like you don't know what all those little things would add up to, what paper they watch, like what they do on the weekends, that could be kind of a daunting task. You're like, well, I don't really know. But if you can think about a person that you know is your perfect customer, that's a really good starting point.
Well, the only caveat to that is you better be really smart and objective on who that person is then. Mm-hmm. Don't pick yourself. Don't pick your best friend. That's not the point of this exercise, right? But yeah.
The difficulty is that the bigger an organization gets, and you've got people on top that are removed from what the customer is like and what the customer is doing. And so the risk there is that you become out of touch with what the customer really, really wants. And so what fail-safes do you put in place that no matter how big you get, right, no matter how focused on metrics and so on and so forth, that, look, any mammoth that becomes a mammoth and it is a mammoth, holy cow, great, you're a mammoth. But that also means it's harder for you to move around and to change direction and pivot, so to speak. So how do you keep yourself agile regardless of how big you get?
So, I mean, when we were over $100 million, we were way less agile than we once were. That's part of the game. That's not really, you could be more agile than you think, but you can never be as agile as you once were, period. But the key is just to be true to yourself. Whatever you set as who you are to the customer and why that's important and who you want to be, if that's working, which by the way, you should be tracking and know it's working, right? You're getting new customers in, you're retaining customers, you're creating an amazing experience, right? You're making money, and your growth isn't stagnating, then that message is somewhat hitting, right? It could maybe be hitting more or whatever, and you can experiment. But when you're large, you don't have that. You don't have the same freedom. I can't rebrand myself, right? That's not realistic, and it would be devastating. When you're smaller, you could take those bigger risks. But even then, it's almost less important that you have the perfect brand. It's more important that you're consistently pushing the same brand to the same type of people. So I think it's just really important, especially on the branding side. Yes, you do check-ins. Yes, you track the numbers. Yes, you give yourself accountability. Yes, you do testing constantly. But it's more important you decide who you want to be in the beginning, right? That's why I mean, the goal is, I don't think very many people, and it's more so now than ever, but like if your goal is to grow $100 million business, you're missing the point. You're missing the point. It's not about how much money you make. It's about how much money you keep, number one. And number two, it's about enjoying your life and having freedom and having enough money you don't have to worry about. You don't need to have $100 million to do that. That can mean you grow a $100 million business. That's fun and exciting. But if your goal is to be the biggest company in the world, I would rather you focus on being exactly who you want to be and having as much success and just focus on growth as opposed to, hey, I got to be 100 million in 5 years. I said, why don't you just do 10 million more this year? And let's worry about the 100 million when we get closer to it. Because, you know, I have people, I talked to somebody today and they go, they're at like 10 million. They want to be 30 million in 3 years. It's like, well, it's possible. You're going to have to do some acquisitions. You're going to have to do this. You're going to have to do this. And I kind of spell it out for them. Right. But like, that's not a like healthy, fun goal. Like your life is miserable growing from 10 million to 30 million. I would rather take four or 5 years to do that and just focus this year. We're going to do 18 million, you know what I mean? As opposed to crap, I got to kill it every year for the next 3 years and be perfect to hit that. I don't know. That's just my opinion though. I know that's anti what people suggest.
Well, here's the thing though. You bring up, and maybe inadvertently, you bring up a really good point. In fact, Laura brought up the point earlier about mission statements. You know, Stephen R. Covey talked about mission statements all the time. In fact, he suggested that you not only have a company mission statement, but that you have a family mission statement. That, you know, somebody's got to tell that dog to chill out during the podcast. You know what I mean?
He can just hear this content and he's just so excited he can't hold back.
So all he's doing is agreeing with my statement that
he is.
Families should have mission statements. So obviously the purpose or the mission of a family isn't going to be, hey, let's make money. The mission of a nation shouldn't be, hopefully not, hey, let's make money, right? Certainly at some point, the mission of an organization should not be solely about making money, because that's just ridiculous, because not everybody's going to be making money. In fact, your people are going to be more concerned about fulfillment once their financial needs are taken care of. Mm-hmm. So if that's the case, then your organization should be a whole lot more than about making money. It should be a cause worth fighting for, that everybody wants to fight for. You know, everybody talks about, okay, great. Once you make a certain amount of money, then what? Well, then you start focusing in on your legacy. And funny thing, every millionaire and every billionaire that has half a heart, right, inside of them, thinks about that. You know, when I die, what are people going to say about me, mm-hmm. right? And so that's what we should be thinking about. Josh is right. Who are you? And what purpose do you serve in this world and in your community and so on and so forth? And then
who do you want to be?
To create a culture around that, and then find people that are also believing and agree with that. And then together you work towards that mission and towards that goal. So
something that I think is a cool way to like get clear on who you want to be. And again, it's in is it The 8 Habits? I think it's a Stephen Covey book too. It's like
7 Habits for Highly Effective People, but there's also an 8th habit, which
there is. And one of the exercises, it's like creating who you want to be. He says, think about your funeral and think about what you want people to say about you. And that clarifies pretty bloody quick. If you want people to say this about you, this is the kind of person I have to be. I was like, this is incredible. Like, and I think that's an exercise most people should do. It's kind of a grim exercise, but it clarifies things pretty bloody quick.
One of the best ways I ever heard this put was that you don't buy a car so that you can get gas. You buy a car so you can go places. And it's the same with business. You don't start a business so you can make money. Money is the fuel. It's the gas that helps you get where your business is taking you. You start a business so you can go places, so you can make a difference, so you can create some type of impact in the world beyond just the dollar amount in your bank account.
And the money's nice too.
Well, of course. That's why you need a full tank. Like, if everybody always watches the tank in their car, right? Like, how full am I? When do I need to fill up? You always want it to be as full as possible.
Except for Laura, because she runs out of gas.
I really thought
Twice.
So I love to hike. And it wasn't last weekend. It was like 3 weekends ago. I went for a hike, and I couldn't let the person I was hiking with be late. So I was like, okay, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to go. I'm kind of chancing it. I don't have that much fuel, but it's downhill. I can kind of roll. Anyways, I got there. That was fine. And then I called Josh on my way, and I was like, can you meet me at the nearest gas station? Because I know I could get there, but I don't think I'll be able to get home. and Josh comes, and he's just like shaking his head as he drives through the garage. I'm like, I know, I did it again. So watching that kind of clock is not one of my skill sets. That's definitely
don't worry, Laura. There's going to be a percentage of listeners that can absolutely 100% relate with you.
Yeah, it's probably something we all need to get better at. I don't know, is it something we should be proud of?
But Zach brings up a really good point. So all the gauges in your car are all the metrics, right? Just like with your business. And if we focus too much on the gas, we're going to forget where we're going. We need to remember where we're going, as well as who's with us, who's in the car with us. And we always say, the bus, right? Get on the bus. Oh, great. Where's the bus going? Right? Where's the bus going? Because guess what? If I don't know where it's going, I'm probably going to get off.
And why?
Right.
And why are we going there?
Yes. Josh said something really brilliant in one of our last podcasts. I know Josh is like, yeah, exactly. I know. But he talked about 3 promises, right? And these 3 promises are really cool. It's, you're going to be a better technician by working here. You're going to be better off financially, right? And you're going to be a better person. And so the interesting thing about those 3 promises is that you're essentially saying that you're never going to want to leave, right? Now, on the other hand, we've talked before in previous podcasts about, oh, well, gosh, eventually people are going to leave. And if that's true, do they leave? Why?
Right.
Why would they leave? If you're truly the best, right? If they're truly going to be better technicians, if they're truly going to be better paid, if they're truly going to be better people, they wouldn't leave. And when they do leave, is that a failure of the individual, or is that a failure of the company to keep that individual? Now, that's a completely different debate that we can discuss later. The point here is this. The point is that if you truly are creating, and Josh is right, you don't just find great people, you make great people. How do you do that? Well, they've got to have the right attitude. So you hire for attitude and over skill set. Skill set can be acquired with the right willingness and the right attitude. They can acquire that. So you hire for attitude, and then train for performance, right? You train for the technical and sales skills that are needed to do the job. So, okay, they're going to be better technicians. And if they are, they're not going anywhere. They're going to be better paid. And if that's true, guess what? They're not going anywhere. And they're going to be better people. And how do you do that? In my personal opinion, you got to do that through the pattern for excellence, right? True and virtuous principles that help you win moment after moment. As you do those things, you create a team of not dispensable people, but indispensable people that, more importantly, never leave.
That's an ideal world. I could tell you, I do all 3 of those things without fail, and people leave all the time. It's part of the game. Like, no matter what, everybody leaves at some point. And it's not because you're not delivering on that. Some things are life circumstances change. Sometimes it's retirement, which is the ideal. Sometimes, grass can just seem greener, and that no matter what you say, you cannot save everyone, and nor should you save everyone, right? But really what that 3 promises is, yes, you're setting expectations, which sets an instantaneous culture, right? In those conversations, those 3 promises, I am setting expectations both from me to them, which creates accountability, right? I'm going to talk before that about numbers, about what we're doing. I'm going to talk about how we're going to focus on them growing, which is a big part of our culture, right? We're talking about how they're going to make more money and be more profitable and have more free time, which is a big part of our culture. We're going to talk about how fun it is and what we're going to do to make this exciting and easy and repeatable, which makes it way more fun, right? So I'm setting a culture hook instantaneously.
That's
and
right.
by the way, this is like so few people I could tell you whether a business is going to be successful or not successful generally within 5 to 10 minutes. And it's never the business owner I'm going to discover that from. It's the people around them. If they have a go-getter culture and they care about the business, and you could tell they're implementers,
that's right back to the leader. Like, no one's going to want to be a go-getter if the leader kind of sucks.
This
is true. This is true. But some leaders are go-getters, but don't dive that into the team, right?
But they can only dive that. I think they can only dive that into the team if they are go-getters themselves.
Actually, again, if we're hiring for attitude, they can acquire the skills to be whatever is
right. Right. But then the leader needs to build the systems for them to have the skills. But like being a hard worker and a get up and goer, that's not something you could acquire quite as easily. That's a personality trait.
Yeah.
Just as is a good attitude. An attitude can be shaped over time to a point, but it's typically something you acquire over years upon years, and it's difficult to it's more difficult to change.
It's expensive to change.
So I agree with Laura. You've got to be somebody worth following as a leader.
Agreed.
If you are somebody worth following, you'll get the most out of each person. Why? Because they want to follow you. Mm-hmm. So Josh is right. Sure. In a perfect world, we're not going to keep everyone. There's going to be some times where we experience a loss. That's what makes those 3 questions so important. In other words, if you can have a strong enough relationship with each individual so that when it does come time for that exit interview, where they tell you the truth about whether or not they feel they're better technicians, they're comfortable enough to tell you the truth about whether or not they feel they're better compensated, and they are willing to tell you the truth about whether or not they feel like they're better people. If those 3 things are true, then more times than not, we can keep them. The fact of the matter is that if we can get to the truth, in other words, they tell us, you know what, I really don't feel like a better technician. Great. That's an opportunity for the leader to learn. I think I'm going to get an extra $2 an hour from the place I'm going to the place I'm going. It's going to be great. Okay. Again, that's an opportunity for the leader to learn, to grow. And then, same thing with the 3rd question, which is better people. If they, in their heart of hearts, gosh, you know what, I don't feel like a better person, that gives us, the owner, as leaders, the opportunity to learn, to grow, and to get better. And if we continue to listen, or as we continue to listen to the answers from these 3 questions, we're going to keep the ones that we want to keep more times than not. And those that leave, well, it's probably better that they go anyway. But again, the question is okay, is a person leaving a referendum on that individual, or is it a referendum on the owner and his or her leadership?
I would make the argument most of the time it's the leadership. In a well-run business, most of the time it's the individual. But in most businesses, that's not the case, right? And
so, go ahead. I want to get like, so amid all this conversation, let's kind of give actionables on how to improve a culture. What I've gathered so far is systems. So when you hire for attitude and you hire for like go-getterness, that's a new term I've just come up with, go-getterness. then you need to train skill, and to train skill you need good systems. So I think that's really a big part. So to have good systems and hire someone with a good attitude and a get up and go-ness. There's clearly more. So they're two actionables. So let's add to that. Let's give at least,
Okay, so
5.
the leader's got to be somebody worth following.
But how do they become that?
Great question. I'll answer that in just a second. The other thing is company fulfillment, individual fulfillment. In other words, you've got to be building something that doesn't just make money. It doesn't just generate revenue. It actually makes a difference in this world. Makes a difference in your community, makes a difference in your country, makes a difference for people. It's got to be for the people. So how do you do that? Well, I can answer those two questions with the same answer. You have an individual who follows true and virtuous principles.
So I have 4. So that's 4. We need another one. We need.
So here's what I would say. Like, I would actually take a step back, even before what Brigham's talking about. And the very first step to any brand or any culture is to identify 2 things. Number 1, what do you want your brand and culture to be? That's step 1. You have to clearly define that. Number 2, what is your actual brand and culture? Because what you think it is and what your customers think it is or what your team members think it is often is not the same thing. So you have to do those 2 things first. And how do you do that? You ask. You ask in a non-difficult, non-upset, non-angry way, and you figure out what your business means to both of those, right?
I think, and make sure people aren't telling you what you want to hear.
You have to be real careful about it. You have to be, you have to get the real information, which is not always easy, but until you identify where you want to go and where you're currently at, it's really hard to say, yeah, be virtuous. Like, yeah, of course, but there's so many virtues. Like, what a business can't stand for 50 things. It's just not realistic. You have to have 1, maybe 2 singular focuses that this is who you are. Above all else, this is who you are. And there's lots of sub things, but 1 or 2 max, right? You have to find out where you want it, what do you want to be, and where you currently are. That's the most important thing, because without that definition and that difference, here's where we're at, man, it's really hard to build a culture or brand. The problem that most people have is they don't really put thought into it. They never really figure out, and they're given a culture or brand by default as opposed to by purpose. And man, it's hard to succeed if everyone else gets to define who you are as opposed to the opposite way around.
Yeah.
So if you define that for your brand and for your culture, you're not going to be there forever either, though.
Correct.
So how do you decouple you, the founder or the owner, from the culture and brand of the company so that you don't have to be the one driving it forever?
But I think it lives on if you make it enough of an impact. It's like Steve Jobs. Like, he totally influenced the culture and he still does, and he hasn't been there.
Right, but it's not actually him that influences the culture. To be perfectly clear, like, when that leader moves on, their influence is short-lived. You're not going to convince me otherwise. What he did leave behind, there's 2 ways to influence culture in a very significant way. Number 1 is hiring. Hire the people, Brigham said perfectly, with the right attitudes and the right kind of people. Teach everything else. If they have the knowledge, that's a plus, but it does not overcome the right personality. Right personality is number 1.
Agreed.
The second thing you have to do is create systems where everything you do lives on. Like, you're doing this with purpose, with thought. There's a lot of why behind everything you do. So when that person leaves, a better example, I forget the name, but the original owner of Southwest. Do you guys remember his name? Anyway, so he was renowned for like being fun. Like, he would hide in the plane, scare people. Like, his whole brand was about being exciting and fun and being the place where people wanted to hang out. It was all about fun, where every other airline was super corporate and like buttoned up and super serious, and you wore a suit on the plane, right? Southwest was the exact opposite, right? When he passed away, and he retired from the business and then eventually passed away, his influence lived on, not because of him or the person what he does, but because he had built into the whole business the uniforms, how they answer, talk and introduce themselves on the plane, the tickets, how the website should be built. Like everything has been influenced with systems and with him hiring people that fits his mold. So it continued to live on. Now it's less that way than it was before, but certainly no one's going to argue that Southwest doesn't have a different personality than other airlines. Southwest is very good about brand personality. When you think of Southwest, you think of something specific. When you think about Delta, that's not as strong. When you think about US Air, it's not as strong. When you think about American Airlines, it's not as strong. When you think about
Aer
Virgin,
Lingus. Wrong though.
Aer Lingus, yeah, Ireland. No one knows what that is, but me and you.
Herb Kelleher, right? Southwest.
Yeah, Herb Keller.
That is a fantastic example. Let me give you another example. Jim Rohn, who did he inspire? Oh, I don't know. Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
Jeff Gitomer. The list goes on and on and on. And whenever they speak, they always say his name, like with respect and honor and everything they've learned and how it impacted their lives. And imagine the amount of influence that Tony Robbins has had on business owners in the United States and beyond. Imagine the influence that Jeff Gitomer's had. And even from the world stage, you've got Winston Churchill. Do you replace a Winston Churchill? No, you don't. He's single-handedly won the Second World War for us. Why? Because he stood there when this juggernaut in Germany said, hey, you know what? We've taken out 5 different countries. We're now going to take out you. And Churchill said, hey, you know what? These are not dark days. These are great days. In fact, these are the greatest days of our lives. And that's why he had an influence beyond his life. It's because he was a phenomenal leader who also instituted true principles. And so did the owner of Southwest. Same example. It wasn't just processes and procedures. It was also a set of principles that they all adhered to. And that's why you saw a smile on their face every time you got on an airplane, even if they worked 12 hours.
I think I've mentioned this before, but there's a book called Extreme Ownership by something Willock.
Jack
Willock. He was
no, Jack. It's not Jack Willock, but it's Jack something. Amazing book.
Amazing book, and it really breaks down how you can create those principles that people would die to fulfill these principles. It was actually, he was like the Navy SEAL. He was a Navy SEAL leader for I think like 15 years or more. A solid book. It's like definitely it definitely is my go-to for leadership, and that's been influenced by people who have been incredible leaders. And like it's like people who ran corporates to people who have ran like a $25 million or $50 million. I think I got it from a company who's built a $50 million company, and he says that's his favorite leadership book. Yeah. It's solid if you want to instill solid principles.
Yeah, if you want to look at really building a culture based off of systems, which is exactly what that book's about. It's obviously to the extreme, and oh my God, it's affected the military is unbelievable. Even just how they line up, how they dress, like everything is systematic and creates they do unbelievable amounts of research and development into human development. The military is an amazing, and anybody in the military, I was never in the military, but anybody in the military could tell you they have everything divined to a T, and it's for a reason. There's a why behind each step of the process, and almost everything is about accountability and tracking. Like literally everything. No one's going to say the military is, the warm, friendly guy about people. It's complicated, but
it goes right back though. They hire for attitude and they teach everything else.
Well, they take everybody.
The few, the proud, the Marines.
The Navy doesn't take everybody.
No, that's true.
Right. How do you systemize things like that, but stay agile, but stay able to adapt?
In the Navy's case, roar at them until they listen. I'm joking.
No, so a lot of people think like systemizing makes you agile. Without the systems, you cannot be agile because you cannot pivot. When you have 500 team members and you don't have systems and procedures in place, there is zero way to get 500 people on the same page, even at a 3% turn. You have to have systems.
Yeah. You have to have systems and processes, but you also have to give a voice to the front line.
Well, that's part of systems. Like if if everything's from top down, that's a poor system.
Right. Thank you. Yes, I totally agree. As long as the front line continues to have a voice, you can continue to be agile. Otherwise, you're just going to be a big mammoth that can't move, can't pivot.
So speaking of big mammoths, I think that's the perfect time to end this and tell everybody to go out and work toward being a big, huge mammoth. And
that's the
thank
name
you.
of our big presentation, turning a small business into an elephant scratched out woolly mammoth.
Who doesn't want to be a woolly mammoth? I think that was awesome, guys. And we built in several actionables, and listen back and look at the show notes too, because we're always going to add in different things that are mentioned. So if you're listening to this, don't think you have to go necessarily back and re-listen unless it truly, truly resonates with you. A lot of things are going to be in the show notes too. So guys, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we loved recording it. And until next week, thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Lip Service for Contractors. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure to leave us a review in the App Store and don't forget to share with your friends. Ideas are cheap. Implementation is what separates the winners from the watchers. Go out and implement these ideas. See you on the next episode of Lip Service for Contractors.